Welcome to another Life Force Canada episode. We have Lena Pu with us tonight. And before we get into her presentation, I have a few things to share. We have new members every week signing up. So exciting. We have many who are listening to our Monday replays on Rumble and YouTube. If you have not yet subscribed to our Rumble channel or our YouTube channel, I highly recommend you do. And we would so appreciate if you would leave a comment. It just really allows for others to be inspired too. We're grateful for all of you that show up here every Monday. You are the pioneers in the freedom movement. At Life Force Canada, we are sharing our knowledge and solutions and how we can cross that bridge from the public jurisdiction, the corruption, criminals, and into the private, co-creating a new earth together as we take a stand in our unalienable rights and learn how to speak the language of freedom. So many lies have been created to dumb down the populace. I love how Andrew Kaufman and Tom Cowan continue to share the knowledge that there's no such thing as a virus, that what we are experiencing is toxicity, right? Toxicity in our environment. Germ theory is manufactured fear. Instead of looking at the germs, we need to look at our terrain and the toxic environment that's been created over the past few decades. We are also reminding parents to unplug from the public school system as we are supporting the unschooling movement. If you are a teacher who is leaving the system or a parent looking for assistance, please check out our LifeForce Canada Education.ca directory. And I trust that Lena's presentation today will encourage more parents to exit the system. Everything we've been taught is a lie. The education system was created by the controllers of this realm. We've been talking about this for years to really stop us from remembering how powerful we truly are, right? We are actually the authority. This realm is upside down. So just like all the other systems whose main function is to manufacture fear, to keep you entertained and distracted from the true reality so that you do not see the Oz or what the Oz is up to. We are truly excited to be announcing that Dolores Cahill is going to be here on Monday, October 23rd. Make sure you mark your calendar. She reminds us that all of those out there who have caused harm, such as forcing the jab, masks, well, any and all harm against any man, woman, son, or daughter will be held accountable. So she is creating a natural law court system. Yay! It's about time, right? Where everyone is going to be held accountable via a claim. And of course, they're going to receive a notice of liability and be subject to fines. Even in the criminal court, there is a term that she mentions about malfeasance, harm done by a public official, where they can serve up to 10 to 20 years in prison. So this does not just apply now to public officials. This is going to apply to anyone who's causing harm. So Dolores is asking us to step up and begin educating everyone so that we can begin to change behaviors, right? Begin to remind them that this is what's going to happen if you continue causing harm. So we trust that by them learning about this information, malfeasance, that they're going to change their behaviors. We are no longer to accept contracts that cause harm to others. So many want to know how to take action, and that has impacted so many. And this is going to be reminding a lot of people in leadership positions that they each have a personal obligation to protect those that they serve. Now, okay, I am very excited to have Lena here. Okay, I'm just going to read her bio to everyone. I'm just going to say her bio I had tears in my eyes because we need to hear more people like Lena taking action. So 9 years vocal advocate for safe technology as expert in wireless radiation. Lena Pu is also an environmental scientist, researcher, writer, and healing products developer. I'm so looking forward to hearing about her healing products. She'll be launching her own line of tuning forks for sound healing next year under Lena's Fabulous Frequencies. Between 2018 to 2020, Lena has led a successful and lawful change in her city's wireless telecommunications facilities ordinance to become protective, thus preventing deployment of microwave radiating antennas, including 5G small cells, from being built within neighborhoods and next to schools. Yay! More recently, starting in 2020, at the height of the pandemic, she was one of the first out the door to make publicly accessible several progressive notice of liabilities that she has written against the wireless deployment, such as smart cities and the transhumanism agenda via gene modifying injections, which both have brought various successes to many people. Currently, she is working with an international group of grassroots people to spearhead her biggest project yet, which is the all-encompassing notice of liability against all the latest agendas we are facing today. Climate change hoax, yes, gene editing of all life, and the electromagnetic terraforming of the earth. While sharing groundbreaking research and information regarding many of the deep agendas we face is important, Lena takes this knowledge further by also providing equal groundbreaking methods to help put mankind out of this AI singularity by providing solutions that empower and heal oneself, each other, and all of God's natural creations. Yes, breathe that in, everyone. Beautiful. We're so grateful to have you here, Lena. I know you have a powerful presentation for us, and our listeners are so ready. And then we're going to open up for a Q&A at the end. The room is yours.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Karen. And I want to welcome everyone for joining Karen's group. And I have to say that, Karen, you're a soul sister, because I love just the way you attack the system. It's a very holistic way of attacking. And this is my focus today, is how do we go about winning? It's holistic winning. We don't operate in fear. And let me just start right off the bat. If you go walking in, talking with anyone on the basis of fear, you're going to lose. You go in there not caring about the outcome will come. But you go in there speaking your truth in love, in power, and without hesitation. And I have to say that I've been doing this for 9 years now. I've gone through the entire system, from grassroots to my local city, and I pounded the pavement in the California Capitol, where I faced down these senators that were just, they were just part of the cabal. And it's very clear. You walk into the state capitol building, and they're all on this podium, and us little peons are squashed in the middle, facing at least a dozen of the senators sitting on this high chair, looking down on you. That was my very first introduction to speaking to the cabal face to face. I have to say that the very first time I walked in there, I was 1 out of 2. I was asked to present, and this was back in 2015, fighting the small cell antennas in California. And I know that when California wins anything, we win for the entire United States, and by extension, probably the the whole world, because we're setting a precedent. So I knew the gravity of this fight was much greater than just local. So I was asked to speak against why it was a bad idea to deploy 5G small cell antennas. And this is back in 2015. And we won that bill. Okay, we actually won. The governor vetoed that bill. It was a long haul. And I say, I wasn't obviously the only one, but I was the first one to set the tone. I was one of the first out of the two. And then anyways, so that was the beginning of my education and how to talk with basically the politicians. You can't go in talking to politicians as a loser. You can't assume that you're just going to go in there and say, oh, they're just politicians and they're going to do what they're going to do. You can hold them accountable from the moment you start speaking with them. Notice of a liability is a way of life. Okay, it is not a piece of paper that you wait and hand to them. It begins the moment you step into any public forum. You have to look at it like it is a courtroom. There are judgments being made. And know that God is the greatest judge and he is in the room. You're speaking on his behalf. When you understand that, you're not going to care about the outcome because the outcome is under his control. And when you throw the outcome out the window, you have full freedom of not operating in fear. And then your words will ring true because it's not tainted by fear. There's power in your words. And whenever you bring in even an ounce of fear in there, and it's okay if you are scared. And I was scared when I walked in, speaking to the senator, sitting on top of that podium, surrounding me. I was shaking. In fact, my legs were shaking. But I did it because my love for God's creation was greater than my fear. So it's okay to bring in the fear, but don't let that direct you. It's always being mindful of there's a higher being, there's a higher source that is in control, that has created all that is on this earth, that is what is going to win against the evil, against the destructive forces that are here on this earth for one reason or another. Okay, so a couple of things that Karen had mentioned. This is really tedious work. There are a couple things that I think is very vital in terms of action. Okay, I talked about the attitude. I talked about how you approach talking to any politician at any level, because we're going to be facing them eventually, whether it's your local politicians all the way up to your provincial level, and possibly, if you have the chance, even at your national level. But really, truly, the change starts locally. And I emphasize this to every group, that local change is the most powerful and most effective. Why do you think Agenda 21 or now 2030 extends down to the cities? Why is there this League of Cities? Because the cabal know that they have to reach down to the grassroots people in order to get them to do their bidding. Think about how the entire world was masked up and took the jab. It got down to the grassroots, to the point where our employers, our completely ignorant employers, were forcing the jab by saying it's a condition to maintaining your job. That's how they reach us, is through the city, is through the local ordinances. So back in 2018, I realized it was time for me to fight the local. I was fighting the state issues for a couple years now since starting 2015, 2016, 2017, I started realizing, you know what, I need to start reaching my local staff members as well, because you have to see both local and broad. And I know people don't have whole lot of energy nor time. But if you have one thing you can do, and that is to change your local ordinance. Okay, that is one opportunity that everyone has the ability to do, because you can pinch the flesh. There's physical accountability where you can see face to face the people who are running the show in your town. Okay, you can put your words of notice of liability without a document by speaking with them, meeting with them. You can put them on notice already from the moment you set foot in those public forum, because what is it? It's a courtroom. You can start uttering new laws that you want them to enforce, that is built on what the people want, not what this private commercial entity called the World Health Organization, United Nations, UNESCO, ITU, International Telecommunications Union, all of those under the umbrella of the United Nations are all private. They have no business working in partnership with any of the countries. I don't give a, there's nothing, there's no treaty. You cannot mix private with public. Okay, there is no treaty that is signed. Our nation operates not at the national level. In fact, it's at the provincial level. And so you want to talk about the powers? It's flipped. Okay, the powers is actually at the local level. You can stop the entire agenda right at the local level. You can nip it in the bud. We haven't had a 5G small cell deployment since I got the ordinance enforced in place, and they have been actively enforcing it. But you have to stay on top of this. Okay, you can stay on top of this locally. So I know it's really overwhelming for people listening to all this chatter and excess noise from all the supposed truth movement folks saying, oh, this is so great, this is so scary, so big, and you're never gonna win, it's controlled by the new world order, and it's like, oh my gosh, I might as well just give up, just say you win, right? I mean, that's the whole idea. It's just they have the bullhorn and they make themselves sound bigger than they really are, because it's all a lie, because they're operating in a private within a public construct. We are the public. Okay, I know it's I don't want to get too deep into this public and private, but ultimately you just have to make your local politicians fear you over the industry, and that's what we did. So when I say speak truth and power, we said some not so nice things to them, and they really wanted, they were sneaky. Okay, they were lying to the public. They were sneaking in the 5G antennas. They were actually allowing all of it to be deployed without the knowledge of the public. I stepped in the nick of time, and I made them go through due process. I used a ton of delay tactics, strategies to get them to slow down. And that shot clock, total BS. It's not law. Okay, that's just narrative that's been passed on that they think is true, but it's not. So when they lie to you, ignore it. Don't get too bent up over their lies. You just have to make sure that they go back to their due process, because all government structure has a system of projects that needs to go through. That's the other thing that people need to understand and learn, is not just law, local ordinance law, state, provincial law, national law, but also the structure of the government. How are you going to know how to move your players if you don't know the chessboard? How many people have read their wireless telecommunications ordinance within their city? Who has actually read it? Do you know what it says? People go, Oh my, I can't tell you how many people over the years have told me, Lena, there's a cell tower right next to the school, or there's a cell tower that was built right next to my house. And I'm thinking that just didn't happen. It wasn't an overnight sensation that just popped up out of nowhere. It actually took several years for that process to go through, but you guys were just sleeping and being blind to this whole process. So I take responsibility. We all need to take responsibility as truth promoters and pushers and movement folks, that we can't just blame it all on them. A lot of it has to do with our ignorance. And I'm not saying, oh, we got to understand what the Illuminati is all about. No, I'm talking about basic knowledge how the government is structured, knowledge of your local ordinance, knowledge of your state ordinance. You don't have to get too deep. It's not that complicated. In fact, it's the less complicated that allows you to win. I don't go in there freaking everyone out saying that, oh, the 5G is going to kill everybody. It's a bioweapon. We got to take all this down. That's not my approach. In fact, I don't even bring up the science. I don't even bring up the science of harm. The first thing I do is like, wait a second, you guys are planning on deploying this without letting the public know? Well, let's go back to the drawing board, because you guys need to go back and follow your due process. That was one of the delaying tactics that I used to bring the city back to square one, because they skipped so many legal parts. It had to go through planning department, which they skipped. It had to go through the public process, which they skipped. It went all the way to the end, tail end, where they were just going to slam all those permits through and start building them. They can't do that. That's illegal. Know your government. Know what they have to do. That is part of their responsibility. Does it have to do with science? No, it doesn't. Did I put science into the ordinance to protect the city? No, I didn't. There's not a single thing about science, nothing about science of harm per se. The simple things is what is going to win. So how did I protect the city? I said, we have to have setback limits. In my town, it's such a small town that it's a typical California town where all the homes are rolling on top of each other. When you have a setback limit of, let's say 500 feet, which is what our ordinance says. And actually, if it's okay, Karen, if we can go over the ordinance that I helped draft, I think that would help solidify, reality. That can be all of ours. Okay. Remember, the answer and the solutions are simple. It's not way out here, like, with all the fear mongering. It's really simple, grassroots, getting down and meeting your neighbors who are serving the cabal, but turn it around and make them serve you. There's no reason why they can't serve you. Okay, maybe they're corrupt. They're not nice. They lie. Well, so what? Just make them do their job. Just make them do their job. And that is really what you want to focus on. Okay. And again, don't waste your time arguing with them, because they're going to try to get you to argue with them about the science, convince me with the science. No, don't even bother. Just say, you know what, Mr. or Miss, you go back to the drawing board and you just follow your government protocol. Okay. We need to start drafting an ordinance. So what we did in Davis, this college town, and it's a cabal run college town, because we're connected to University of California, Davis. And if you guys aren't familiar with UC Davis, we have contracts with Elon Musk with the Neuralink. Okay. We also have money from Monsanto supporting our ag. We are doing research on putting vaccines in our food source, the vegetables, basic vegetables. This is my town. This is the school, the university that is attached to my town. And so you can imagine what I had to go through fighting the city council to get this ordinance in place. So I am living testimony that it can be done. Okay. You just can't let the fear of, oh, they're the cabal, whatever, get to you. Because I know, God is greater than you. God is greater than all of this. And I'm just a servant. I'm just a voice for him. I'm an intercessor. That's how I look at myself. I'm a warrior / intercessor. Okay, so let's just go into my ordinance, and I want you guys to see how reality can be manifested into your local law, the very thing you want. Okay, and this is something that can trump even federal laws, can even trump international laws. Because because everything that is in here is not going against the WHO, the UN, the national laws, the Telecommunications Act of 1996. If you guys, understand any of the American national laws, it's not going against any of that. This is my town, Davis, California, and our California Municipal Code. Okay. Now every city's code is found most likely in different areas. Every city ordinance is different. And that tells you how unique every city is. But as you get up higher to up the totem pole of the government, you go to the provincial level, the provincial laws, if you look across the board, become more homogenized because the cabal has more control over that. And then you go even further up to the national level, then it's all homogenized. Like if you look at all the countries, nations, national laws, they're all very similar. Like they're all following the Agenda 2030. They're all following this climate change, hoax agenda. But it's trickling down to the local level. Okay, so the local leaders are now they're being influenced heavily. Okay, there's a lot of pressure on them to start changing their ordinance. And this is why I also want to bring this up with you guys, to know your ordinance, because that's how they're going to be controlling you guys in submitting to the climate change agenda, submitting to the more jabs, because climate change is changing everyone's, health, so that we need everything to be jabbed. We're going to aerosol spray vaccines into the air because nowadays climate change has made it that is the only way we can deliver safety for every living being. Okay, not just man or woman, but also animals. Okay. The local laws is also what is going to be promoting, obviously, the wireless deployment, if it hasn't already happened. Okay, so in my town right here, our wireless ordinance is under Chapter 40, zoning. It might be the same for you, or yours might just be spelled out out, but it's kind of hard to find if you don't know how to navigate your local ordinance. So I really suggest that you guys study your local municipal code and just kind of go over all of it. It doesn't hurt to read and know your local laws. Okay, so Chapter 40, zoning, okay, and it's under 40.29, wireless communications facilities. This is a pretty general term for most municipal code. That's usually how they call it. Sometimes it could be called wireless telecommunications facilities, WTF, or in our case is WCF. Okay, so you click on that. So this sets the tone for what the industry can and cannot do. You have to have the local laws, some type of law that's going to tell the industry, these are our rules, these are our local rules, and you have to fulfill whatever criteria we set. And it could be anything, okay? So this article is enacted pursuant to the city's police power to regulate for the public health, safety, and welfare, and is subjected to the FTCA Act of 1996. Okay, that's okay, because honestly, if you guys review the Telecommunications Act of 1996 for the United States, it actually puts the power back into the local hands. It says that in the federal law, that the local laws determine what the telecommunications facilities should look like or how it's to be deployed. They don't want the responsibility. You think the federal wants the responsibility of all these local cities that are, thousands, that numbers in the thousands, breathing down their neck saying, hey, you proposed this and you're in control of this. Now we're being sued, so we're going to sue you. No, they don't want that responsibility. Okay, the responsibility really, this is, again, it's topsy-turvy. The local is where the power is. That is truly also where the liability is. Okay, this is important. Okay, prohibited wireless facilities. No cities have this. Only a handful of cities in America actually have ordinances that have this section. The following types of wireless facilities are prohibited are the ones that exceed the RF emission standard by the FCC, okay, and areas that are zoned or designated for residential uses within 500 feet, and mixed use zones are also part of this, are included. So for instance, if you have a house plunked in the middle of the town, the downtown area, that's 500 feet all the way around that house is protected. The industry, the telecommunications industry, loves putting antennas in the downtown area. Almost every single downtown in every city that I've ever been to, I can't stand to be there for very long. I'm electrosensitive, and I could feel it. It's radio frequency hot. It's too hot for me. And they love to put it's everyone in there is just baking. Okay, so if you have a house in these mixed use areas, 500 feet. Also, sensitive habitat areas are protected. Also, the historical resource, okay, historical areas are also protected. That's that section. If you keep going down, it goes into further detail, and it also mentions schools. Okay, residential areas as well as schools, there are setback limits. And if you live in a rural area, I would recommend at minimum 2,000 feet, because rural areas, there's just that much more land in between the homes. But this works for our town. They didn't deploy any small cell antennas in our neighborhoods. Okay, that's how I knew we were successful. Not only did we get the words into our ordinance that's protective, but they acted on it. Okay, our city enforced it. Okay, this is really important. Okay, and RF analysis conducted and certified by a state licensed registered RF engineer or qualified consultant to determine the maximum potential RF power density of the proposed wireless facility at full build out. Okay, we're not looking at just the power density of one antenna, but the totality of all of the facilities. The engineer shall use accepted industry standards, et cetera, et cetera. The RF analysis shall be provided by a qualified firm or individual approved by the city. This is important. And paid for by the project applicant. So we're putting the burden of the pay on the industry that wants to get these things permitted. However, it's not the industry that's choosing the RF engineer, but the city. This is very important because the industry, okay, if you put that burden on the industry will hire people that they know that's going to say it's all safe. You want to have the city be in control of hiring their own personal RF engineer. Then you, the public, can step in and say, hey, I know a building biologist that's just awesome. They've got all the right equipment, and they're going to be able to, we're going to hire him or her, and they're going to do the assessment. That's fair. That's how it should be. It should be an independent party hired by the people who, that's not industry connected. Okay. And in addition to that, I just shared is also a cumulative impact report. Okay. Cumulative impact analysis for all the existing cell towers and taking all the accumulated radio frequency levels, and that will be also included as part of the report. So we're not only looking at the power density of one cell tower, but we're also looking at the power density of all the existing cell towers in combination with the proposed new one. So to quote the last part of the sentence, the proposed site that would result if the proposed wireless facilities were operating at full build out. So they also have to notify the public, because that's what they've been doing. They've been avoiding notifying the public. This is worldwide. I consult with in the UK, and they say they just deployed all this stuff without even telling us, without even announcing it to the public. That's wrong. Again, when I say that at the national level and at the state level, provincial level, all the rules are very similar all across the world. It is frighteningly similar. They follow the same rules. The only time when the rules are very different is at the local level. It just shows you the individuality that the cities still have. We want to maintain that. Okay, there's something very blessed about that realization. When I started reading all these local ordinances for these last few years, I started noticing that every single city's ordinance is different. The Agenda 2030 is trying to homogenize all of that. They're trying to erase the individuality, the creative differences in each of these cities. They are being put under pressure right now to change these ordinances. So this is why we need to jump on the ball and start getting to know what our ordinance says and who our local leaders are. Okay, here, this is really important. Public hearing, noticing. Public hearings on proposed conditionally permitted wireless facilities should be conducted and noticed according to Davis Municipal Code. The noticing radius should be 500 feet. And there's another regulatory compliance and monitoring. So we're allowed to monitor any cell tower post deployment. Okay, so it's not just coming up with an analysis report before the cell towers are built, but once anything is built, we have the powers to go in there and have them continue to be monitored by the city at the expense of the applicant, the permit applicant. So that way we can make sure that the radio frequency levels do not keep going up and up without our knowledge. Because it's really hard to control. Once those cell towers are up, you don't know what kind of antennas they're plunking on them. You don't know what kind of frequencies they're broadcasting. You don't know the strength and density. Okay, those are all, you can't tell by visualization. You can only tell by measuring them with sophisticated devices. I've seen towers that are these tiny little things, looks innocuous, but it's just like, it's killer. And then I've seen big ones where I'm like, I can barely feel it, and I'm electrosensitive, and I'm like, this is a really big looking tower, but you know what? I can hang, for a little bit. So you can't tell how strong any tower is unless you measure it by a professional. And yourself too, if you guys don't have one, get one. Great meter. Now, when people talk about 5G is still within the 4G range. Okay, 5G really is just more frequencies that are within up to 6 gigahertz. So this will still pick up your quote unquote 5G. Okay. And I hate it when people say, oh, if it's not 5G, it's okay. No, we were dying with 2G. Okay. It's just more of the same or similar. So it's just a greater saturation of what has been damaging us since 2G rolled out. 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, there's no difference. Okay, it's not 5G is worse and 5G is terrible. 5G is just 4G packaged with more of the same. So this is why when I talk about wireless radiation, I don't say 5G because it's really confusing and it minimizes the damage that we've already been suffering under 2G, 3G, 4G. I just call everything wireless radiation, 5G included. That's how I broach this topic. Okay. So this is how you kind of dissuade, well, not kind of, this is how you, one of the tactics of dissuading the industry from wanting to deploy within your town is by saying, we're going to put all the burden of these reviews on you. All the radio frequency engineers that, that's going to come up with these reports, that's all on you. We're going to be monitoring, that's on you. And you also have to go through CEQA, California Environmental Quality, I think it's assessment or act. Okay. That's going to make them run the other direction. They don't want to bother with a federal law that requires environmental assessment. It's an environmental assessment that is required to get any project in the ground. And that includes wireless telecommunications because it's a big, huge facility that is demanding a lot from the environment. So for the United States, that is one of the biggest addition that a lot of people are using to win this war against the deployment of these antennas, small cell antennas and cell towers, is the use of the national CEQA as well as the NEPA. CEQA is California State Environmental Protection Law. NEPA is the National Environmental Protection Act. That both of them have been used and rightfully used in conjunction with all these other things that I've listed to show that we are not breaking the law. You are. If you are not following CEQA requirements and NEPA requirements to do your environmental assessments for every single cell tower that is deployed, including small cell antennas. If you're going to put a small cell antenna in our neighborhood, you have to do an environmental assessment. That's the law. You think the industry is going to want to do that? Well, it's going to delay many, many years just to put that little small cell antenna. They're going to say, no, thank you, because that's going to be a lot of money and a lot of time wasted. Okay. And I know Canada probably has a very similar type national act that's also requiring you guys to do environmental assessments. I'm sure if I did a little bit of research, I'd probably be able to pull it up. Okay, so anyways, I think those are some of the most important parts of the ordinance. So I can, okay.
Thank you, Lena. That was fantastic. And you're so right. We've been talking here at Life Force Canada in regards to, this is not about us voting in any system that is federal or provincial. The power is in the town. The power is in our county. The power is in our communities. And that's where we need to take action. So thank you so much for sharing this information. Yes, keep going. Love it.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Karen. I'm so glad you see through all of that. Yeah, I know, because America, it's what, Republican versus Democrat, and they a lot of them have wanted me to waste my time educating politicians and being friends with certain ones of them. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to waste my time. I'm just going to go make laws.
Yes, exactly. That's what it's all about. I love it. We are the authority.
Yes, that is absolutely right. And the more you do this, and I want to encourage folks, because it is daunting and it is intimidating. It's designed to be intimidating. Like I said, they sit on top of these podiums to make you feel like you're a little, a little peon. That's okay. It's all smoke and mirrors. They need that pompous boost because they know it's all a lie. Okay, they know this. And so they want to put you in what they want you in their place, right? So we're just going to reverse that. And we're going to hold our power by uttering and controlling and taking back the words of law and create them. Create your words of law, so it can be done. At the very least, if writing ordinance isn't your thing, you should at least know what they say. You need to know what the wireless telecommunications laws, how they're stated in your town, so that you are educated when you go in there to speak. Because if anything, we all of us here in this forum, at least can go in and give our 3-minute testimony. Okay, that's very easy to do. And if it's a little scary, believe me, after the first time, the second time, by the third time, it will be a cinch. You'll go, oh, I got this. I can do this. It wasn't that bad.
And
So,
Lena, I love what you said in one of your videos, that a notice of liability is a way of life.
absolutely. Because by the time you write it, the truth is already there. It'll just come. It'll just flow. You don't have to struggle with the words. It's just, you're living it. You're living the notice of liability. You're living, this is the way I look at it, and this is how I broach my group when I was teaching them how to exercise their powers since 2020. I have a private group. The reason why most of you guys probably haven't, I don't do this publicly. I don't even announce things publicly. Everything I do is really underground because I have to not only protect myself, but I have to protect the people who are doing this. So I've been coaching people how to exercise the notice of liability lifestyle since 2020.
I think there's a lot of people here that want to know more about the notice liability, and do you have different steps involved?
Depends on who you're aiming for, public or private, local, provincial, national. It will look different. And when I was coaching my people back in 2020 and 2021, I basically wrote it, and they just took the documents and added the exhibits that were relevant to their town or state, whatever it is that they wanted to do, and then they signed it and they got the witnesses.
Right.
Because it was so early on, it was impossible for me to teach people how to write a notice of liability. So I just wrote one, because remember, the laws are all the same,
yes,
across the board,
right,
worldwide. So I wrote one that actually pertained to every single nation. I've had Australian, I don't know if the prime minister was served, but one of them stepped down. The woman who served the 5G in Australia, she stepped down. It was served in Hong Kong as well. I mean, this is what I mean. It's universal. The documents I created was universal. And he was scared because Hong Kong is tied to China, and physical fear of his life, especially in Hong Kong, if you retaliate. But he's doing great. He's fine. So and I've had people in Europe, in different countries. With the United States, all of us served. I made this one criteria. I said, if you're going to serve anybody, I want you to include Ajit Pai. You got to get FCC guy in there, and they did. And he stepped down within a couple months. If you know the whole FCC system, Ajit Pai stepped down before his time was up. Biden was supposed to come in the following year, but Ajit Pai stepped down like months before that was to happen, before he was even, eligible to step down. And they moved the funds from the FCC to this nondescript federal agency who is now handling the 5G deployment. It's supposed to be the FCC. But because we served so many notices to them, that they actually funneled, I think it was $2 billion to this other, it's called the National Television Industry Association or something like that, which is a non-entity. So they actually had to deflect what we did and move that fund to that agency. And so it was like, whoa, it worked, but did people know why? Nobody's really questioning it. So that gave me like, hey, you know what? The government at the highest level do respond. They do respond to our notices. They just won't tell you. They won't tell you, oh yeah, we're stepping down because we got all these notices of liability. No, they're not going to do that. But it's just strange when they step down prematurely, and then when they shift billions of funds from one agency to another agency to deploy the 5G. And mind you, I didn't even think to serve the NTIA because it was the FCC that was doing the whole 5G deployment. So there you go. That's very interesting.
I noticed you're focusing on the NOL for schools. So thank you for, giving the voiceless a voice, educating parents on how to take a stand. So how can parents or anyone who wants to get involved to create their own NOL in a local level?
At the local level, again, starts with your words. Meet with them, speak with them. The NOL is a process. Okay, it's not a document. When you send them the document, that's the tail end of the process. You have to follow your own due process. Just like the government has point A to getting to point Z to getting projects in the ground, we also have to follow due process. From the public end, we approach these people, we have to have a meeting of the minds. Okay, and that starts off with plain old communication. Hey, let's meet. Let's have coffee. Let's have a formal meeting. Email. I love email because there's a record of it. Okay, and always say, I want these emails to be put into the public record. Okay, so it's part of the whole due process. It's part of you building on top of this liability, this legal case. Okay, you're building on your legal case. Think of it as everything you do is part of building your legal case. And when you have meetings, if you can, try to have an audio tape. I don't think they like visual tapes. For some reason, they don't allow that. Maybe we can work around that. But I have audio tapes of the meetings. Okay, and I have everything put into the public records. In fact, if you look at the city of Davis records, when we were fighting this whole wireless deployment, we had submitted over 500 pages of documents.
Incredible.
And that includes science. Okay, I'm not poo-pooing science. Okay, but science is not the argument. It's about your due process. It's about responsibility. It's about following the protocol that projects have to fulfill, including telecommunications facilities. Telecommunications facilities has no special reason to be extracted and deployed quickly. It needs to follow all the other project rules, just like all the other projects. Okay, so you need to muscle them down back to following the real orders, which is really their own government rules. So again, it's not like we're extracting them saying, no, you're gotta only do common law, and this is, public or private. But if you make them follow their own rules, it's actually very protective. I used to work for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and this is a federal agency. This is when I came out of college, and I did environmental restoration work, and I didn't know I was supporting Agenda 2030 at the time. But what it did do was it taught me how the government fulfills their projects. And there's a ton of red tape because they actually do things to protect the whole process so that nothing, the end product is gone through proper steps. So basically what I'm saying is that all projects follow proper steps for a reason. Okay, and most of them are pretty logical, understandable, and acceptable. Okay, so this is why they want to hasten this stuff. They want to skip all those things. No. Telecommunication facilities follows all the other projects just the same. Delay tactics and strategies. Again, this is not about science. However, bringing the science as supporting data, It's your support. It's not the main. Okay, that's not the main thing. Same thing with vaccines. It's not about the vaccines. It's about you didn't follow certain procedures and protocols. You broke all the rules. The injectors didn't read the the directions because the directions weren't there. That was a liability on them. They shouldn't be injecting any type of quote unquote medicine if there was no directional manual. Same thing with nurses. They had certain, you can't jab without drawing it back a little bit so you don't puncture a blood vessel, right? But they were told to just strike it in and push the contents into the blood vessel straight. So there's certain protocols that they deliberately missed. So that's the vaccine side. Same thing with the whole wireless. They're being told to skip certain important protective measures that has nothing to do with the science. Same thing with the vaccines. The doctors fulfilled their protocol that they have free will, they have choice. Same thing with employers. If they follow just the fact that you have a choice, you can't enforce. You're not a medical doctor. You can't enforce a medical procedure without knowing the employer. Every doctor has to follow HIPAA. And then you're an employer. You're not even qualified to make a determination whether you should receive any type of vaccine or not. You're breaking the law. It has nothing to do with the vaccine. It's the fact that you just overstepped your role. No employer has the role of being a doctor and in facilitating any type of medication.
Amen, sister.
Right. So let's, what? We got power without the science.
Yeah.
Okay?
Exactly.
They just want us to get lost in it. Okay. They want, because it's mucky.
Yes.
So,
Lena, this is so great. I want to thank Stephen from Safe Water Canada for introducing you to me and to Layforce Canada. We're just going to move into a Q&A now. We had Cal Washington on this year in regards to notice of liabilities. Are you following his wave at all?
I kind of keep up with what he's doing. My notice of liability, actually, I was originally the first author for his group when
oh my gosh, I knew you were connected.
Yeah, this was back in 2017. I was asked by Josh Del Sol to write the 5G, wireless, including the 5G notice of liability, and I did. And that was my very first draft I had written, and I was done with it. And they sat on it for a year. And this was back in 2018. And by the time 2019 rolled around, I was getting antsy. I said, look, no action is being taken. It needs to be moving now, because I knew 2020,
right.
Yes, I knew something big was going to happen. And it sure enough, it did. From all my research, I could see that 2020 was going to be a serious event. And so I was pushing them. I didn't tell them what I was seeing, because I see things, I can predict things. And I didn't tell them specifically what was going to happen. But I knew the wireless deployment was 100% part of the whole deal. And I knew the whole AI transhumanism was also, that was part of the whole reason why they needed to deploy the wireless. So I was disappointed that they didn't deploy back in 2018 when I had my notice of liability written, and it is a very powerful document. Obviously, because it got Ajit Pai to step down. So I took it back and I said, I gave you a year.
Right.
And so I'm taking it back, and no one can plagiarize it. This is mine. I'm taking it back, and I deployed it myself. And believe me, again, just like the first time when I was walking into this state Capitol building, testifying against one of the most ugliest bills our state has ever seen, I was nervous as anything. I mean, I was actually having nightmares and just anxiety attacks right before launching my notice of liability, because I was doing this by myself. I had no team of people like Cal Washington did. He has a huge team of people. And I was doing this by myself, but I said, I have to do this. And I launched my Patreon April of 2020. I wrote a general direction on how to serve and why you need to serve, and kind of teaching people how to do this. And then I gave coaching lessons, live coaching lessons every week. So that was April 2020. And so by the end of 2020, we have already served a lot of people, just based on my one person coaching people from all over the world.
You're doing such great work. I intuitively knew that you were somehow associated to Cal Washington in the beginning. So yeah, thank you. Okay, we've got Stephen here. Hi, Stephen.
Hello, Lena. Nice to see you again.
Hi, Stephen. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And I'm wondering, in support of the effectiveness of these notice of liabilities, I'm privy to the success that you had with the local hospital that you had with the temperature guns. I wonder if you would just share that story briefly.
Oh, sure. Yes. So during the pandemic which was happening in 2021, by then they were using temperature guns everywhere. And because I'm electrosensitive, I can actually feel the temperature gun. And for some reason, those temperature guns, the effects linger a lot longer than the wireless stuff. And so I did some research, and I find that it's actually it's toxic. Okay. And it's not meant for use, because it's a bodily use on flesh, is because they've never done any safety tests on living flesh. Temperature guns begins with using on inanimate objects. Obviously, we use it for, testing on hot surfaces and things like that. And then suddenly they just started changing the technology and modifying it for human use without ever having done studies. So anyway, so I quickly wrote a 2-page letter, okay, which I guess you can call it a notice of liability. It doesn't have all the elements of a formal notice of liability, but it is a notice of liability nonetheless. And the 2-page basically spelled out a lot of laws that the hospital's breaking, HIPAA, because it's being deployed. It's a medical device instrument being deployed by someone that's not your medical doctor. And it's a device that's not been studied for health effects. And also I mentioned that it harmed me. I'm electrosensitive, and I felt the pain, the effects. So I brought the personal into this letter, and it was only 2 pages. And I attached some science articles to it saying that the infrared rays that come off of this, or the rays that come off of the guns, was damaging. It was damaging to the DNA, to the cells. And lo and behold, the next time I walked into the hospital, the reason why I had to go to the hospital in the first place was because I was actually bringing my daughter in for surgery. And so we had to visit it many times, multiple times. And so each time they were like, zapping you with the temperature gun right to your forehead before you can even speak. The first time I said, do my hand. But then I thought again, I said, no, they shouldn't even be tasing me at all, touching me at all with these temperature guns. So the second time before going into the hospital, I quickly I actually wrote this 2-page letter 45 minutes before we were going to go to the hospital. And then I had that letter in hand, and I slapped that down before that woman could actually tase me, because they do that thing so quickly. So I slapped that down. I said, this is my notice against the temperature gun. So she did not tase me. She took that letter. I had 2 copies of it. She gave it to the authorities, the hospital's authorities. The next time I walked into the hospital, which was probably a couple of weeks later, because my daughter had continuous follow-ups, they didn't have even a temperature gun on the table.
Bravo.
As I understand it, Lena, also they're supposed to do, the laser does damage to the pineal gland, and they're also desensitizing the notion of you're aiming a gun at somebody's head.
Yeah, it's more than your pineal gland. It's your entire brain. It doesn't really necessarily penetrate to the pineal gland physically. What it does is it ricochets within your skull. Your skull is a crystal. It's hypercrystalline structure. The bone structure of your skull is hollow. Bone is hollow. It's these microcrystalline structures that are hollow. And that's what gives it strength. It's like these like a ball, a hollow ball. It's like water in reverse. you know how the crystalline structure of water is? Well, bone is the same. Just think of it that way. And then when you hit a taser, whatever you want to call it, against the skull, your bone is absorbing all of that, and it's ricocheting and being magnified.
Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you, Stephen, for asking. We have Laura Jane. She's a trustee in Life Force Canada, and she's also part of the Cal Washington Wave. Laura Jane, go ahead.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Lena. I have seen you doing a presentation with one of the other PMA groups that I'm part of. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Love what you're doing. And I love the fact that it boils down to this: do your research and then move forward in confidence where you're going. And while we have different things, it is part of what I'm doing now, part of the wave. I'm doing the 5G, the wireless component with Cal, just because he's built a lot of stuff and it will get us through. Those notices, by the way, have kicked in quite a lot, and there has been some good results with the Anzac wave and a few other things. But I kind of knew that. I kept thinking, why do I know Lena? And it was from the fact of you speaking before. And what a lot of folks don't realize is that if you go back, and I was looking at my small town, this all started in 2016, 2015. And that's how far you have to go back in doing the research to find the information, that you're going to put forward out of there. But I think that one of the things that I've really loved listening to you is the common sense, the fact of do your research, have no fear, and know that you're backed up by a much higher level that's going to come through. And that part I love. And the fact that a notice of liability doesn't have to be 1,500 pages. It's not legalese. A notice of liability should be sweet, to the point, put the evidence there, get the affidavit, say that it's true, and make sure you keep a record. So I just want to thank you very much for being here and for all the beautiful information that you've shared with us tonight. Thank you. And let's hope that my notice of liability that will be going out in a few weeks will get rid of some of our corrupt mayors.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Congratulations. That is just so great to hear.
Thank you, Laura Jane. This is great. Seeker.
Thank you. Lena, I really admire what you're doing. I really like the way you arrange all your due diligence and hold them accountable and liable for their conduct. Okay?
Thank you.
I started similar things, which I call it simple logic.
Ooh,
I believe you're really following the same process. We don't need that many laws.
yes.
We really need to simply logically figure out what they are doing. Is it proper? Have they followed the laws?
Yes.
Are they following their oath? Are they delivering their
Yes.
oath at the commission or not? Okay.
Yes.
At the time, roughly around late 80s, early 90s, I'm talking about 1990s, I used something instead of notice of liability. I called it user agreement and fee schedule. Okay? And is absolutely effective to the point that even tax collectors, or collection agencies, everyone backs out once you serve them properly. But the main thing, as you said, is you have to do your due diligence and know what you're talking before you serve them. Is actually you win the case without going to court if you do it properly. So I thought to raise this issue, and the simple logic as far as I'm concerned is based on contract. Because I truly believe there is nothing that we do in the society. I mean, the interaction between an individual and others within the society is based on some sort of commitment, agreement, or contract.
Absolutely.
Right. So we need to learn the laws that govern that.
Absolutely.
once we do that and we know how to interpret everything perfectly and not interpret things the way we want it to be, interpret the situation the way it is, then we have much greater chance. And so far, I can actually tell you, Gavin, you're talking about the simplicity. I have a 1.5 page letter in response to any collection call. I guarantee you they would disappear.
Mm.
They will not call you back. It doesn't matter where in the world they're calling. Because the logic is this. If you are acting as a third person in a relationship between me and another principal party, show me where I have agreed for the third party interference in my relationship with another party. If they cannot do that, they have no standing in that affair. And as a result of that, with similar logic, I actually managed to help an individual who tax people were coming after him for quite a lot of tax debt.
Mm-hmm.
And the judgment came down not guilty because they could not prove their case. I really admire what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say that user agreement, a fee schedule, that's all very similar terms, with conditional acceptance, conditional agreement. Notice of liability is just one it's just one title based on contracts. It's all based on contracts. It's based on trust. No, in fact, my notice of liability, it is big. Okay, my notice of liability is really big, but it's based on their laws that they're breaking. Okay, so I don't even touch the science until the very end, and that goes for both my wireless as well as my vaccine, quote unquote vaccine notice of liability. So both of those don't even talk about the science until the very end.
Thank you, very appreciate you. Hella, go ahead.
Hi, Lena. Wonderful
Hello.
listening to you. So powerful, and I admire your courage and your determination and strength. I'll share a little victory today that speaks to some of the things that you talked about, speaking to power, or who we perceive that have power over us as an authority figure. And then I'll ask you a question about something that I hope you can help me shed light on. Okay, so I'll start. I visited a friend of mine in a senior's home today. And in the desk, they're putting box with masks, and now sanitizer are back here in British Columbia. And I'm ignoring it. I'm going in, and the nurse from the desk, there's like, oh, well, you have to put a mask. And I smile and say, no, I don't. And she's like, she didn't know what to do because they haven't encountered someone so simply saying, no, thank you, I do not. And then her supervisor came and asked me to do that. And she's calling her manager, which wants to speak with me because I refuse to put on a mask. So first of all, I said to her, I do not want to speak with your manager. And nobody here have authority on my body. And I am not allowing anyone to impose me of any medical procedure, including putting on a mask. Yes. I'm perfectly healthy. I'm visiting a friend of mine who is here in the senior's home, and we're enjoying our time. Thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving. They were like, and a few minutes later, we were about to go out with her, but the nurse in the desk told her something like, well, you should put a mask. We have 60 people here. We're responsible. We're liable. And I'm overhearing that. And I stepped forward and very politely, I said to her, I've just heard how you're talking to my friend. Shaming, blaming, and guilting is totally not okay by me. And do you know that masks actually do not block viruses? Have you known that? And so she didn't know what to say. But the other woman, as we were walking towards the door, she said to me, I know that you're right. I'm sorry, we have to follow our guidelines or our rules. And I said to her, if those guidelines and rules are harmful, why do you have to follow them?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking we have to speak up now. It's like the second wave that they're bringing, and just have to be very polite, but very strong and do not comply.
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. I applaud you. Beautifully said. And I can tell that you said it powerfully, but in love. And you said it with such purity. You know, I loved what you shared with me. I'm so glad you shared with me. In fact, I have to say that I put a dear friend of mine into a senior living situation recently myself, and we wrote into the contract that he will not take the PCR test. So that is something that you can also put into the contract. And, you know, I know one of the other attendees mentioned contract. The notice of liability is a contract, or whatever document you write is a contract. And you can basically state, even, you know, in the paperwork, and pull up his file, your friend's file, you can even state, you know, you can even write just a simple 1-page letter saying masks harbor viruses and bacteria and all kinds of nasty microbes. It is unsanitary after 30 minutes of use. Hello. And you're breathing in your own carbon dioxide and depriving yourself of oxygen, which is also immune suppressing. Hello. You know, so just 1 page, a simple 1 page, if that upsets you, I mean, if it upsets them, you know, it's a simple 1 page, you know, like what I did with the temperature gun. What the paper does, what I love about the paper is that it permanentizes your words. So you share the words, but at least it's not lost in perpetuity, because now you have a paper, and make a copy of it, have your friend be a witness and sign it. And I say one of the most powerful things you can do with any of these documents that you write, these contracts that you write, whatever, however you want to call it, conditional agreement, notice of liability, or, you know, right for bodily authority and autonomy, you know, you can title it whatever you want. What makes it a contract, a powerful contract, is if you have 2 people witness you giving them that document and signing it right then and there. That would be wow. Okay, 2 witnesses. So bring a friend in and have your attendee, you know, sign it. That would be like, it would permanentize what you are doing for not just yourself, but anyone else that steps in, wants to be vocal about it, but are too afraid to. Because remember, you're representing a whole bunch of people who are too scared to speak up.
My question is, 2 years ago, I did serve a letter, a contract, an LON to my son's principal. And I stated clearly that I do not allow any medical procedure without my informed consent. And they've respected that. It was on his files. Fast forward, he's not in the school system anymore, but I'm, as a teacher and educator, I'm noticing the SOGI, sexual orientation and gender identity. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
Not the term, but definitely the program. Oh, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Right.
It's really bad.
So my question is, how can we use some kind of a legal procedure as citizen to demand, I'm in Vancouver in British Columbia, to demand the Vancouver School Board to disclose all documents that they have on this curriculum? How did they decide on it? Who's funding it?
Yeah.
As parents, as educators, do we have like a legal?
Yeah, it's a Freedom of Information Act here in the United States. It's a FOIA, and I think you guys definitely would have something like that. And you can demand, because it's a public facility, any public facility, well, I hate to call you guys residents, you're a man or woman,
Yes.
has the right to go in and demand for how the project came to be, how the decision came to be, how the exercising of certain protocols came to be. You have every right to do that. And you have to be specific in your timeline, though. You gotta say, I want all the emails relating to this SOGI decision made between the staff members and external relationships with educational, provincial facilities, agencies. I want all of those relational discussions, copies of that, from 2000, I don't know, 18 to current. And I did this with my city. I said, I want all 5G wireless antenna cell tower information related to the city. I want records of that. They ended up spending $100,000 just pulling out those records for under my request. I made them do that, and it
How
cost them.
long did it take them to do that?
They submitted something to me every week. You had to be on top of them though. Okay, this is something that I think you need to look into. This is more important, more urgent. I just found out in my school, this is the high school in my town, they just contracted with a hospital to do sex change on children without the parental consent.
Yes. It's
we're doing that here
exactly
too.
part of the things that we want to
Oh,
address.
so this is a global
Oh, yeah.
phenomenon.
Oh, yeah.
And that contract is what needs to be attacked. Okay, so the school cannot contract with a medical facility like that.
Exactly.
That right there is wrong. I wouldn't worry so much about how they came to this conclusion. I would just go right to the jugular. You don't have much time. Okay, you don't have much time.
Mm.
You need to challenge that contract and write that notice of liability that you wrote for your own daughter in the same attitude with the same wording. Like, you're an educational facility. That is what you are entrusted to do. Okay, that is what your appointed oath of office leaders have trust. Okay, there's a trust. Okay, all contracts operate under a trust. They are breaching that trust. They have a limitation of duties. They are overstepping their duties, and they are breaking their trusted role. Okay, so that's what needs to be done. And this is what I was telling people, like, when they're approaching their employers. What does your contract with your employer say? Is there anywhere that says the employer has any control over your medical rights? No, nothing. So what business do they have? So go with that tactic with the education system, is that education system has never been a medical facility.
This is so great. Brian? Go ahead.
Very briefly, Lena, I know you're in California, right?
Yes.
And I thought that California, I don't know a lot about the United States political system, but I got the impression that California is one of the more difficult political environments to do what you are doing. And I really just wanted to express that you're maybe doing this in an environment that is very difficult. And I just want to give you credit for doing what you're doing. That's all.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. That was very sweet. Lena, I added your website in the chat. How can we support you?
Well, I'm actually haven't really been doing the NOL for the last 2 years per se, but I do have a Patreon that I do give a lot of information in there. If you're interested, it's not a whole lot per month. It could be a $10 donation, $15 a month. There is everything I've done since starting 2020. It's all there, but of course it's pretty hefty, so it's really hard to navigate because there's so much information. However, I do give a lot of stuff in there that teaches you how to fight the city. Okay, my most recent seminars I gave was how to fight the city, as well as healing frequencies from my tuning forks, why I got into this, and why these are so important to introduce back into your system, the wholesome frequencies. So
I love tuning forks. Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness. Okay, cool.
Thank you, Lena. And I trust everyone here that's listening, they're going to spread the word and share this video far and wide. This information really needs to get out there. You have put so much time and energy into all you do, Lena, and the paperwork that you've created. I will definitely be sending out all your information on how people can contact you, connect with you when we send out our newsletter this week. And again, thank you for your leadership, your persistence, and your passion, Lena. We can definitely feel your heart and soul, and we just appreciate all you do.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with your lovely, lovely people.
Thank you. We will definitely have you back.